Welcome into the Commander Support Mailbag. I am your host, Jack Sperry, and as I say every single week, this is my favorite segment that I get to do every single week because I get to answer questions on the Washington Commanders directly from you guys. All right, you guys have questions, I have answers, so without further ado, let's get into those answers. But before we get into the questions today, click that subscribe button if you haven't already to join the most interactive fan community for Commanders fans anywhere on the YouTube platform. We're also the largest individually run Commanders news channel anywhere on the YouTube platform with over 40,000 subscribers. We also go live every single Wednesday for our weekly live show where we film these mailbags. So if you guys want to get a question on a future Commander Support live show and mailbag here, join us every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for our Commander Support live shows. All right, we're going to start here with Ronnie England Jr. Says, does Brian Robinson Jr. earn a contract extension this season with his production? I think it'll be an interesting discussion, and there's going to be multiple variables here, Ronnie, that go into this. All right, number one, how does Brian play this year? Now, if he becomes absolutely undeniable and he's like a top 5, top 10 star running back, then the Commanders are pretty much going to have no choice. They got to bring him back. But, I think that if he has just an okay season like he's had the last several years here in Washington, I think it's going to come down to how much money Brian is willing to take, because I think that this team really likes him. He's a hard worker. The players in the locker room like him, and if he's willing to take a team-friendly deal to stay, I think that the Commanders would be happy to keep him around. He's still relatively young. And I think that they like him. And, when you have a guy like Jaden Daniels at quarterback who's a dynamic rushing threat as your quarterback, you don't need to have like an elite number one running back necessarily to have a really good run game. This team was top 5 in rushing EPA last year. And I mean, I like our running backs, but I don't know if any of these guys you would consider like a top 5 running back in the league, right? So I think that Jaden Daniels provides a lot for you. So if Brian's willing to take a team-friendly deal to stay, I think that's something the Commanders will consider. Then we get Kenny Lewis here. Says, Jack, do you see Ben Sinnott and Luke McCaffrey having breakout years this year? I sure hope so, man. Luke looked damn good during mandatory minicamp. Multiple touchdowns scored with the first-team offense during mandatory minicamp team periods. And then Sinnott is somebody that's very athletic, somebody that's a really good route runner, quick feet for his size. It's really rare. But he's got kind of shorter arms, so his catch radius for a guy that big is actually not as impressive. He's had some drop issues because of that in his career, and Zach Ertz is still here, and this is an offense that usually bases out of 11 personnel, which means 3 receivers and just 1 tight end. Now, and then when they do go to those multiple tight end sets, they just signed John Bates to a multi-year extension, and he's their true blocking type. So I'm curious to see what their plan is for Sinnott this year. We'll see if he gets on the field and how much he gets on the field. But with Luke McCaffrey, man, if Noah Brown's going to be out for a while, if he's going to be hindered with that injury, whatever it was during mandatory minicamp, Luke's got a hell of an opportunity here to prove himself if the Commanders don't bring in another receiver. Got one from It's Torch, says, do you envision a scenario where Brandon Coleman becomes an all-pro at guard? Maybe down the line. He's got the physical tools to do it. He's a big body. And I do think that, I said this, when he got drafted by the Commanders last offseason during our draft coverage, I think he's a guard. I don't think that he marries his feet and his hands all that well, which you have to be able to do as a tackle. We saw that problem come up for Coleman last year at left tackle. But that's not as much of an issue when you're playing guard. So he's got the physical tools to be really, really good. All-pro, that means you're one of the best guards in football. We'll see how good he can become, but I do think that is the right move for this organization and for this offensive line. I think the team made the right decision putting him inside and kicking him inside. While also getting Laramie Tunsil, by the way, who's the best pass-protecting left tackle in football, in my opinion. I'm very optimistic about the future of Brandon Coleman. So fill in the blank for me. Down there in the comments section, the Commanders have a top blank offensive line in the NFL this year. Do you think it's top 10, top 15, top 20? Do you think it stinks? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section for today's pinned question. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds, and when that happens, take advantage of that time by letting me know just how good the Commanders' offensive line is. Got one from Ken Gray. Says, what about signing both ZaDarius Smith and Jadeveon Clowney? Well, I think that they're going to just add one, Ken, and here's why. All right, they like some of the players they brought in this offseason. They like Dietrich Wise. They like Jacob Martin. They like, of course, Cleveland Ferrell, who they're bringing back. And, of course, Dorrance Armstrong is still here. Like, if you add both of these guys, then you have to start wondering, do you cut Jacob Martin? Do you cut Cleveland Ferrell? And I don't think they want to do that, all right? They signed these guys relatively early in free agency for a reason. So I think that if they're going to add another edge rusher, it's just going to be one. I'm perfectly fine with Dorrance Armstrong being your number 2 starting edge, and then the other guys rotating in. And I don't think this team necessarily needs 2 more edge rushers. I think they just need 1 good one, and I think there's some good ones still out there. Going from Fantastic Fun 21 says, would you accept this trade, Terry McLaurin and a first-round pick for Jalen Carter and Devonta Smith from the Eagles? Well, I mean, probably not. If I'm being honest with you, I kind of like the interior that the Commanders have built this offseason. And then also, I don't want to give up my first-round pick next year because as we discussed earlier in the week with the Shamar Stewart trade idea where somebody suggested the Commanders should give up their first-round pick for Shamar Stewart in a trade this year, if you do that, you only have 1 pick in next year's draft in the first 4 rounds, all right? And it's a round 3 pick. That is like you're not adding any new talent, new starter talent in the draft next year if you make that trade. So no, that's not something I would be interested in. Fantastic fun, but definitely a fun idea. Then we got one from League Bound says, do you re-sign Deebo if he finishes the year under 1,000 receiving yards? So what's interesting about Deebo is that his production just doesn't come from receiving yards, right? He's going to be used as a rusher in this offense as well. And he was used as a rusher there in San Francisco. You look at his numbers over the last several seasons there in San Francisco, his receiving numbers haven't gotten to 1,000 yards since 2021, but he's had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage multiple times since then because of the rushing production that he has. So I think, if we're talking about if he's under 1,000, total yards this year as this team's number 2 offensive weapon, I would say probably not bringing him back next year. Obviously, it has to be in the context of, if he gets injured or, how the season goes, all this different stuff. But, I think that he's going to have to be productive this year if he wants to come back as a player for this team in 2026. But before we get into the rest of the questions this week, go ahead and check out our friends at Fanatics where you guys can get a Jaden Daniels jersey in your closet today. All you have to do is go to chatsports.com/Daniels to pick up a JD jersey for yourself today. And if you don't have one of these things yet, man, I mean, they're selling like hotcakes, and there's a reason for that, man. Like, this is a jersey you're going to be able to wear for the rest of your life as a Washington Commanders fan. It also helps out the channel because if you click our link down in the comments and description, chatsports.com/Daniels, and you make a purchase, Fanatics sends us part of the proceeds here at the Commanders Report to continue our work, giving you guys free and informative Commanders videos every single day. So if you want to help yourself out, help us out as well, chatsports.com/Daniels, and make a purchase. Got one from one of my favorites here, Jasmine Gray says, I have a question for you, Jack. It is Terry McLaurin is staying here in Washington to play. Yes, he is going to be staying here. He wants to be here. The Commanders want him to be here. It's just a matter of how much money, he's worth. And I think Terry knows he has the leverage here because he knows how important he is to the team, and he knows that he can pretty much name his price, and Washington is going to have to come to the table. So I do think it's going to be a very lucrative contract. We'll see, how lucrative it is. We'll see if he's asking for more than Justin Jefferson. I wouldn't love having to pay him more than JJ. Because I don't think he's better than him, but, anywhere between like 30 and 33 million, I think is more than fair. We'll see what the actual number ends up being and what McLaurin's asking for. But yes, I do think that something will get done between McLaurin and the Commanders before the season. Got one from Edit Z says, will the Commanders sign James Cook? Well, he's currently on the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills are shopping him, but, he wants to get paid a lot of money. All right, like he wants to, Dalvin Cook, his brother, has quote unquote joked about paying him like $30 million per season. That's what he's going to be demanding on his next contract, and it's like that's not going to be happening, man. Plain and simply. And running backs, obviously, they don't get paid as much as receivers. They don't get paid as much as quarterbacks. But James Cook seems to want to kind of push the envelope and be the highest paid running back in football. And the Commanders don't necessarily need a guy like that, man. Like, they don't need to be paying a running back all that money because, like, their run game last year, as we discussed earlier, was a top 5 rushing attack in the league without a top 5 running back. And part of the reason for that is you got a quarterback that can run the football as well. So I don't think that's a move that's very wise for the Washington Commanders personally. And I think somebody else will take the bait on James Cook. Got one from TK here, says, who do you think will lead the Commanders in rushing yards this year? It's a good question. I think it will be Brian Robinson Jr. if he stays healthy. Now, Jaden, I think, will actually get close because Jaden, as we know, is just special with the ball in his hands out in open space. But I do think Brian Robinson Jr. will lead the league or lead the team in rushing yards. And, I think Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, as the season goes on, will get more and more work. And I think Austin Eckler will also have a pretty productive season as well. But I do think B-Rob, at the end of the day, if he stays healthy, will lead this team in rushing. Got one from Terry. It says, do you think the more national exposure the current Commanders are getting will help past players like Lyndon, Fletcher, and Brian Mitchell get into the Hall of Fame? Honestly, no. Honestly, I don't, unfortunately. Those guys, I think, definitely deserve to get in there. But I don't think that the national exposure necessarily helps them out because, like, people on the national televised games are not watching London Fletcher and Brian Mitchell, right? They're watching Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin and Daron Payne and the guys currently on the Commanders, not the old school players. So, no, I don't think that that's going to push them forward, unfortunately. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Should Fletcher be in the Hall of Fame? I'm a clear yes on this. He's an awesome player, man. He was an awesome player. Deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. If you're with me on that, type those yeses. But if you disagree, type those nos. All right, some great questions once again this week, guys. If you guys didn't get your question on this week's mailbag, we will be doing another mailbag next week on the Commanders Report live show. We go live every single Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time, so click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and join us for our live shows every single week to get a question on a future edition of the Commanders Report Mailbag.